Hi.
I've always prided myself on being a good sister. It's just what you do, right? You help out when family needs you. For over a year, my sister Jamie, who was going through a tough patch, losing jobs, dealing with personal stuff, came to stay with me. She didn't have anywhere else to go, so I opened my home to her. Free rent, food, emotional support, you name it. I wasn't just letting her stay, I was actively supporting her in every way possible. It wasn't easy, but family sticks together, right? Things seemed okay at first. We were doing that sister bonding thing, having movie nights, talking about life, and she was slowly getting back on her feet. Then, out of nowhere, everything started changing. Like, she completely changed. Her fiancé, Greg, moved in with us for a bit while they saved for their place, and that's when things started going south. I thought I was doing a good thing, but I had no idea it would lead to the mess that was about to unfold. She got engaged, and that's when everything got weird. Suddenly, I wasn't as important to her anymore. She stopped hanging out with me, and I noticed she was being more distant. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe she was just excited about her wedding plans, right? But then I realized it wasn't just a wedding excitement phase, she was shutting me out completely. No longer sharing about her life, no more late-night chats about how she was feeling. It was like the woman I helped for a year, who I thought I had this strong bond with, had completely disappeared. Then came the engagement party. I found out through social media that my sister had thrown an engagement party, and guess who wasn't invited? Me. I had no idea. I mean, I helped this woman for a year, practically housed her when she had nothing, and she couldn't even bother to invite me to a major life event? I was hurt. Beyond hurt. I couldn't believe it. We were supposed to be family, and she excluded me like I was some random stranger. It stung. I tried to stay calm at first, thinking it was some sort of mistake or miscommunication. I texted her, "Hey, what's going on? Why wasn't I invited?" No response. It was radio silence. I called her. Still nothing. I was furious, so I decided to confront her face to face. If she was too busy to talk, I'd make time for her. When I finally showed up at her place, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Jamie opened the door, and instead of the warm sisterly welcome I was expecting, she just stared at me like I was an inconvenience. And then, without even a hint of remorse, she said something that shattered me. "I don't think you understand, but things are changing now that I'm getting married. My priorities are different." I was speechless. She basically just threw me aside because she was too busy with her new life. And the worst part? She looked at me like I was the problem. It was one of the most gut-wrenching moments of my life. After everything I did for her, after all the sacrifices I made, this is how she treated me. I didn't yell or get emotional, I was too hurt to do anything. I just stood there, feeling like a fool for ever thinking she cared about me. That moment, I realized my sister wasn't who I thought she was anymore. She wasn't the person who needed me, who I could lean on. She had become someone else, someone I didn't recognize. That was the last straw. I had been there for her when she had nothing, and in return, I got nothing but cruelty. So I made a decision. If she wasn't going to treat me with the respect I deserved, then I wasn't going to keep helping her, or her fiancé. But here's the thing, I didn't just stop helping them emotionally or financially. I knew Greg had been relying on me for a few things too, and I wasn't about to keep up that arrangement. So, I cut it off, cold turkey. No more free rides. No more financial help. Nothing. The whole thing was like a slap in the face. And to be honest, it felt good to finally take a stand. But I had no idea what was coming next. After I cut ties with Greg and Jamie, I thought things would settle down. I figured we'd get some space and talk things through eventually. But I was wrong. The fallout came fast and hard. At first, Jamie tried to act like everything was fine. She sent me a couple of texts, pretending like everything was cool, but I could feel the tension. It didn't feel real, not after everything that had happened. She was just going through the motions. Then one day, I got a message from her asking to talk. I thought maybe this was the moment where she'd realize what she did and apologize. But nope. She showed up at my door, and from the second she walked in, I could tell it wasn't going to go well. Instead of an apology, she told me I was overreacting about the engagement party and said it wasn't personal. And then she hit me with this, "I don't really need you in my life anymore. I'm moving on, and I think it's time you do too." I couldn't believe it. After everything I'd done for her, this is how she treated me? I wasn't the problem here, she was. And to top it off, she blamed me for causing drama in her life, saying Greg didn't understand why I was making things complicated. I didn't yell. I didn't beg her to stay. I just let her talk, nodding along, pretending to listen. But inside, I was dying. She wasn't the sister I knew. She had completely changed. She left, and I didn't try to stop her. The next few days were a blur. Friends started texting me, saying Jamie was upset and I was being selfish and demanding. They told me to understand how stressed she was about the wedding. But none of that mattered. I had been there for her for years, and no one saw that. No one understood why I was hurt. It was over. I was done begging for a relationship that wasn't mutual. Jamie had chosen Greg in her new life, and no one, not even her, seemed to care how it affected me. I was alone again. This time, it was because I stood up for myself. And it hurt more than I could explain. But little did I know, things were about to get a lot worse. After I cut ties with Jamie and Greg, I thought I'd finally get some peace. But then came the phone call. It was from our mom. She was frantic, saying Jamie was falling apart and begging me to come over. She wanted to talk, she regretted everything. I didn't want to, but part of me still cared. Maybe, just maybe, she'd realized what she had done. So, I went. When I walked in, Jamie was sitting there, looking broken. She told me she didn't know how things had gotten so bad, how she pushed me away. But I was done listening to excuses. You hurt me, Jamie. You chose Greg over me, I said. She started crying, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, but I couldn't believe her. She was too wrapped up in her wedding and Greg to notice what she'd done. I spent so much time being there for you, and you couldn't even invite me to your engagement party, I told her. The words stung, but she deserved to hear them. She looked down, apologizing. But I was exhausted. I wasn't going to fix this anymore. You can't just expect me to forgive you for all of this, I said, getting up to leave. But just before I walked out, she said, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't have the energy to reply. I turned and left. It wasn't the closure I hoped for, but it was the closure I needed. I couldn't keep trying to fix a broken relationship that Jamie wasn't ready to heal. Sometimes, people make their choices, and there's no room for you anymore. It hurts, but I'm learning to let it go. So, after everything with Jamie and Greg, I thought I was finally starting to find my footing again. I was focused on my own life, focusing on work, spending time with friends, and just trying to keep my mind busy. I figured I was done with that chapter. Then, out of nowhere, things took another turn. One night, I got a message from Greg. Yep, Greg, my sister's fiancé. I didn't even know if I should respond. After everything that happened, I was done with both of them. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message. It was simple, we need to talk. I know things got bad between us, but I want to make things right. Please, let's meet. At first, I was pissed. Why the hell did he think he could just waltz in after everything? But then, there was a part of me that just wanted some sort of closure, some sort of explanation from him. He'd been a part of the mess, and maybe, just maybe, I needed to hear what he had to say. So, I agreed to meet him. We met at a cafe, and as soon as he sat down across from me, I could see the tension in his face. He was nervous, fidgeting with his coffee cup like it was the most important thing in the world. I know I've messed up. I've been thinking a lot about everything, he started. I didn't say anything, just watched him. He didn't deserve my sympathy, but I couldn't help but listen. Jamie's been pushing me away, and I've been an asshole. I get it now. I didn't respond. Instead, I just stared at him, waiting for the rest. I'm sorry for how everything went down. I know I screwed up with you. I should have been a better friend, and I should have been there for you, too. I let her pull me away from everyone, and I hate that I hurt you. I didn't know what to say at first. Part of me wanted to just walk away, tell him he was full of it, and go back to pretending like none of this had ever happened. But something inside me, maybe it was the fact that I was tired of holding on to all this anger, made me respond. It's not just about you, Greg. It's about Jamie, too. She made her choice, and I wasn't a part of it. But I'm done chasing her, chasing anyone who isn't willing to put in the effort. Greg looked down, his expression full of regret. I know. I really do. I just wanted to apologize, and I needed you to know that I see what happened. I can't take it back, but I want to make it right, somehow. I didn't have an answer for him. Honestly, I didn't know what kind of closure I was expecting. I'd already made my peace with the situation in my own way. So, I just stood up, told him it was too little, too late, and left. I wasn't mad at him anymore, but I also knew there was nothing left to salvage. Jamie and Greg had made their choices, and I wasn't about to beg for a place in their lives. I was done with it all. It wasn't the conversation I thought I'd have, but it was the one I needed. I didn't walk away with any grand resolution, but I did feel a sense of weight lifting off my shoulders. I could finally move on without wondering if they ever realized how badly they had hurt me. That was the last time I spoke to Greg. And honestly, I don't regret it. After talking to Greg, I thought I was done with it all. But then, Jamie reached out again. It had been a couple of weeks since I blocked her, and her name popped up on my phone. My heart sank, but I knew I had to read it. Her message was short: I know you probably hate me, and you're right to. I've hurt you, and I don't know if I'll ever fix that. But I need to say goodbye properly. Can we meet? I didn't want to meet her. I didn't want more hurt. But part of me still cared, and I agreed. When we met, Jamie looked different, thinner, worn out. She didn't look like the sister I once knew. I know I've ruined everything. I pushed you away when I needed you the most. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am, she said. I wanted to be angry, but I felt exhausted. You really hurt me, Jamie. You didn't care about me, about anything I did for you. You just moved on like I was disposable. She looked devastated, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. I didn't want her pity. I've been so selfish, she said, her voice cracking. Yeah, you have, I replied. And I don't think I'll ever forgive you for that. She nodded, understanding. There was nothing more to say. I hope you find what you're looking for, I told her, standing up. But I'm done. I walked away. No drama, no grand moment, just done. I didn't need her apology to heal. I needed to let go. That was the final goodbye, the one I gave myself. After that final conversation with Jamie, I thought I'd feel a sense of relief, like a weight lifting off my shoulders. But instead, it was like an emptiness. It was over. The chapter that had consumed so much of my energy and emotions was finally closed. Or so I thought. For a while, I threw myself into my work, picked up old hobbies I'd put aside, and tried to focus on building my life back. I wasn't just moving on from Jamie, I was also moving on from the person I had been while I was trying to hold everything together for her. And honestly, that wasn't easy. It was like I had to relearn who I was without that constant drama. But as time passed, I realized something. Even though I wasn't angry anymore, even though I had made peace with the situation, there were still moments when the past would creep up on me. Little things, like a random memory of the time we spent together or a text from an old friend who mentioned Jamie. One night, I was scrolling through my phone, looking for something to distract myself, when I saw an old picture of Jamie and me. It was from a trip we had taken years ago, before everything went south. We were laughing, carefree, together. And for a moment, I missed the way things used to be. But then I reminded myself of the truth. The person in that photo wasn't the same as the one who had hurt me. She wasn't the same as the person who had pushed me aside for Greg and her own life. That woman was long gone. And even though the memories stung, they weren't enough to pull me back into that toxic cycle. I started to realize that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about accepting. Accepting that people change. Accepting that sometimes, even family doesn't treat you the way you deserve. And most importantly, accepting that it's okay to walk away. I don't think I'll ever forget what Jamie did. But I've learned that I don't need to. I just need to move forward with my life, without the weight of her mistakes dragging me down. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. I kept moving. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like I was still carrying the weight of everything. But with each passing day, it got lighter. And eventually, it got easier. I'm not healed yet. But I'm on my way. And that's enough for now. Just when I thought things were finally starting to settle, life had one more curveball for me. It was a regular Saturday afternoon, and I was catching up on some reading when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was Jamie. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not since that final meeting. I'd blocked her on everything, so the fact that she was calling meant one thing: she had found another way to reach me. I don't know what possessed me, but I picked up. Hello? My voice was flat, and I could feel my heart racing. Hey, it's me. Jamie. Her voice was shaky, like she was trying to sound calm but couldn't quite pull it off. I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure what to say. Part of me wanted to just hang up, block the number, and never deal with this again. But I couldn't. Not yet. I know you probably don't want to talk to me. I needed to reach out one last time, she continued. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realized how much I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know how to fix things, but I wanted to try. I took a deep breath. This was familiar, too familiar. She was saying the same things again, things she said when I last saw her. The regret, the apologies. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I had already heard it all. Jamie, I finally said, my voice steady. We've been through this. I've heard all your apologies, and honestly, I'm done. I'm moving on. I can't keep doing this with you. There was silence on the other end for a moment, and I could feel the weight of the words hanging between us. Then she spoke again, softer this time. I just wanted you to know. I'm not happy with what I did. I'm not proud of how I treated you. But I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive me someday. I paused. Maybe. But not now. I don't have space for that in my life. Not anymore. I hung up before she could say anything else. I sat there for a while, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. Part of me was angry that she thought she could just waltz back into my life with a phone call. But another part of me just felt sad. Sad that she hadn't learned, sad that she hadn't truly understood what she had done. But more than anything, I felt relief. I hadn't given in to the guilt. I hadn't let her pull me back into the same old cycle. As I sat there, I realized that this was another step forward for me. I had done the right thing. I had finally learned to put myself first. And this time, I meant it. There was no going back. I deleted her number, once and for all. After that phone call with Jamie, I realized just how far I'd come. A year ago, I would have been desperate for closure, desperate to know what went wrong, or to at least get some sort of answer from her. But now, it felt different. I was no longer chasing her validation, no longer hoping she would make things right. The funny thing about the phone call was that it didn't shake me like I thought it would. It didn't trigger all those old feelings of hurt and anger. Instead, I felt this strange sense of calm. It was like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying finally lifted off my shoulders. I didn't need her to apologize anymore. I didn't need her to fix things. I had already done the hard work of letting go. Over the next few weeks, I focused more on myself. I picked up new hobbies, traveled with friends, and even started to get into meditation to help clear my mind. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't constantly thinking about Jamie, or Greg, or the mess they'd left behind. I wasn't consumed by the past anymore. I spent time with people who actually cared about me, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. And slowly, I started to feel something I hadn't in a while: peace. It wasn't like everything in my life was perfect, but I was learning how to handle the quiet moments, how to fill the spaces with things that made me happy instead of clinging to past hurts. The emotional scars from everything Jamie put me through were still there, but they were fading. They didn't control me anymore. I had stopped looking backward and started looking forward. I had learned to trust myself again, and more importantly, I had learned to set boundaries with people who didn't respect them. One day, I was sitting in a cafe, enjoying my coffee and a book I had been meaning to read for months, when I realized something. I hadn't thought about Jamie in days. I didn't feel a thing when I thought about her. No bitterness, no sadness. Just nothing. And in that nothingness, I found freedom. For the first time in ages, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life, and that was enough. I had let go, and in doing so, I had made room for a better future, one where I didn't have to carry around the weight of betrayal and regret anymore. I still didn't know where Jamie's path would take her. But mine was becoming clear, and it was filled with peace, acceptance, and the kind of growth I had been craving for so long. And for the first time, I felt ready to walk that path without the shadow of her mistakes hanging over me. That was the real closure. Not from her, but from me. As time passed, I kept moving forward. I wasn't perfect, but I was getting better. The hole left by Jamie's betrayal slowly healed, and I started to embrace new experiences, new people, and the new version of myself. But just when I thought things had settled, something happened that I wasn't expecting. It started with a text from an old friend, Sarah. We hadn't spoken much in the last few months, but she reached out one evening. "Hey, I know it's been a while, but I was thinking about you. How have you been? Really, how's everything going?" I stared at the message for a moment. It was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Sarah had always been someone I could count on, even during the tough times with Jamie. She had been there when I was at my lowest, always offering support without judgment. I typed out a response: "Hey, it's been a journey, but I'm doing better. Slowly, but surely. How about you?" The conversation flowed easily after that. Sarah asked how I was really feeling, not just how I was doing on the surface. And for the first time in a long while, I was honest. I told her about the struggles, the anger, and how I was finally learning to let go. I admitted how I had been avoiding everything about Jamie, that I had put up walls to protect myself from being hurt again. She listened, no judgment, just understanding. It was like a weight had been lifted just talking to her. Then, Sarah said something that stuck with me. "You know, I've been thinking about it. You've gone through so much. But you've come out the other side stronger, even if you don't feel like it right now. And I think you've learned some really valuable lessons." I didn't know what to say at first, but it felt good to hear that. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired, like I was just barely holding everything together. But hearing her say it made me believe, for the first time, that maybe I was stronger than I thought. Maybe this whole ordeal hadn't just broken me, it had shaped me into someone who could handle more than I ever realized. That conversation with Sarah became a turning point. It reminded me that I didn't need to do everything alone. I had people who cared about me, people who had seen me at my worst and were still there. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving, too. And with Sarah's reminder, I realized that I was finally starting to thrive. The next few weeks, we hung out more often, went for coffee, had dinners together, and reconnected in ways we hadn't in years. It was simple, but it felt right. For the first time in ages, I was surrounded by people who truly understood me. And that connection, it was like a small spark reigniting something inside me that I thought had burned out. Jamie's betrayal had changed me. It had made me cautious, sometimes guarded. But this new connection with Sarah, this new chapter in my life, reminded me that there were still good people out there. People who saw me for who I was, not for what I could give them. It felt like the beginning of something new, something I didn't expect. I wasn't completely healed. I still had scars. But for the first time in a long time, I realized that I didn't have to carry everything alone. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready for the next step. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew one thing for sure: I had the strength to face whatever came next. As the months passed, I found peace in unexpected places. Healing wasn't linear, but I was learning to embrace the ups and downs. Some days, I felt like I had it all figured out, and other days, the past would creep back in. But through it all, I was growing stronger, learning to let go of what had hurt me, and embracing the future. My connection with Sarah deepened. She didn't ask for anything from me except to be myself, and for the first time, I allowed myself to be vulnerable. We spent more time together, enjoying simple moments without the weight of my past hanging over me. It felt like a fresh start, and I stopped looking back. One weekend, Sarah and I took a trip out of town. It was the first time in a long while I felt like I could breathe, no drama, no pressure, just peace. It was exactly what I needed. Then, unexpectedly, I ran into Greg. We locked eyes in a coffee shop, and I froze for a moment. He walked over slowly, and for a second, I thought I'd feel anger or bitterness. But instead, I felt nothing. It wasn't indifference, it was just peace. We exchanged a few words, and I told him that I was done. Jamie's part of my past, and I was moving forward. He seemed to understand and walked away. I didn't need anything from him anymore, no apology, no closure. I had found that within myself. With Sarah by my side, I was learning to heal in ways I hadn't expected. My life was ahead of me, and for the first time, I could see the future clearly. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough.
Bye.